Okay, so where did we get to last week? Um, so last week we managed to build, well, we managed to basically set up the account, which is I would say probably the kind of the best place to start, isn't it? You want to make sure that you have an account that's on brand. It's on brand. It has your logo. It has your colors. I deal with a lot of partners building conversations and building chatbots for their customers. And I think I mentioned this last week, but it's super important for when you deal with customers to actually make it seem like their bot right from the get-go. And so obviously here we're building a fictitious, completely fictitious bot for a fictitious company and everything. So nothing out of this is actually real. But you can imagine that if this was your bot and someone else was building it for you, seeing your colors, seeing your logo, although it looks a bit fancy at the moment, but seeing all of that would be incredibly valuable. It just makes it ever so yeah, relatable. So we did that. We went around and basically built the Converse widget, which is here. You can go back to last week's session; it's all in here. So I wrote a bit of content here. I can put you in touch with zero point 0.5 bucks. That was how funny I felt last week. I did all of the coloring and the composers and things like that. So all of that set up. So that's cool. I don't think I've done any of the other channels. So no, the embedded channels is still the same. The 4-page chatbot is certainly still the same. So that hasn't changed. I think this is something I'm going to do um, at some point towards the end of the sessions. Is deploy it to a full-page bot and then deploy it on Telegram as well. I think I talked about that last week. Um, so, okay. The next thing we did was create a few FAQs, and so we created, what are your web design services? And so if we go and talk to the bot about this, we should get a nice answer. Cool. So all of that's done. So I would say this is kind of the first baby step into creating a bot. So designing it, I think it's quite important. And then in general, you kind of want to have a few FAQs to start with, so you can actually talk to the bot and you can actually say stuff. I think that's quite important. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. If you have any questions, obviously just ping me. And yeah, I'm kind of ready to start. So what are we doing this week? I think what I want to do this week is spend some time building conversations. So we obviously created three FAQs here out that kind of describe the three products that this fake company does. Which is obviously a marketing agency. And so typically marketing agencies will do PPC services, web design services, and SEO services. That's quite, or SEO or content services. And I think what I want to focus on is we're actually building a lead generation bot. And so yes, giving the information of, what are your SEO services is nice and good, but it doesn't actually generate leads. It's just kind of like, all right, yeah, this is what we do. Okay, cool. What I want to do is I want to make sure that this not only just answers questions, but also generates leads for my business. And so the best way to do this is actually to start creating conversations that we can then tie to the FAQs, and we have kind of a full-on end-to-end chatbot there. So we're going to start with this. So I'll give you a super quick overview on this conversation builder first, because I think it's always worth doing this. So I just headed to the conversation builder here in Chats, then builder. And it's always worth noting that these conversations here are all pre-built. They are all part of the platform. I didn't build all of this. These are default conversations that basically provide kind of an infrastructure for your bot from the get-go. And so, yeah, these conversations basically handle, something went wrong or human fallback or the welcome conversation. We actually went and edited that last week. Successful live chat, talking to an agent or triggering live chat, no handlers, etc., etc. So what we'll do today is, like I said, we'll create those lead generation conversations, and I think it's probably just worth kind of diving right in. I think we're gonna do 3 conversations. So I'm gonna call them lead gen SEO. This conversation helps captures leads interested in our SEO services. So I'll do that. And for now, for those of you who follow us quite a lot, for now we'll just do a very simple what we call a postback, which is basically a little keyword that no one is ever going to write themselves. So I can just say SEO underscore services, because I know that no one ever in the world is going to ever write this, but I can use this inside the bot as a little trigger to just quickly start this specific conversation that I'm going to build. And so if I just say, I'm just going to quickly do this just to show you what's happening. SEO services. So I'll go through all of this in a minute, in much better format. But so just to kind of show you, if I send this kind of little keyword here, as you can see, it kind of onboarded me in that conversation. And so whatever we build in that conversation can flow from this specific process. And if I say, if I say SEO services, it's probably not going to do anything, except maybe, it's going to trigger the FAQ. So you can really clearly see the difference here. SEO services is kind of like natural language, which is picked up by our natural language processing engine, and fires the FAQ back. But then if I use SEO underscore services, that's kind of the keyword, which is triggering that conversation or that process. Okay, so that's conversation one. I think I'm going to create all three conversations out the gate. So lead gen, PPC, they do this conversation helps. No, what did I do? Captures leads interested in our PPC services. Great, and I'm going to do the same. So equals PPC services. One thing that's interesting to notice is I keep clicking this little drop down here and kind of just picking message equals, which is one of the simplest events that you can have on the platform. If I go into our docs, just to show you triggers. In the docs, which you can access with docs.ubisend.com, you'll see that we have basically a really long list here of all of the events you can use. As you can see, I'm scrolling through here. That all of the events you can use to basically trigger or move conversations forward. This is what makes ubisend really, really special. And here I keep using the message equals. I'm gonna drop this link to inside the chat so you can refer to it. So I'm basically using message equals PPC underscore service, which is a very simple event. It's literally just picking up the message that people are sending. But I could use all sorts of other events. So I could say, when the user lands on a specific page URL, or an API is made, or an API request is made, or payment has gone through, or the subscriber returns to the bot, all sorts of things. So obviously there's about, I don't know, 80 or so events here that I can use, and they're all described here. So if you want to have another look, you can say, integration returns an invalid response. Okay, what does that mean? All of that is explained inside this piece of doc. So just go and have a look. And just to finish on this thought, I keep picking message equals, which is super simple again, but I could do message is an email address, or message is a number, or message is true or false, or a business email address, or matches regex, etc., etc. There's loads and loads of what we call conditionals that you can use based on event, then conditionals, and then whatever the little piece of information you want to give it. Anyway, this is kind of a little bit more advanced, and we'll do that in a bit. So I'll quickly do this again, PPC services, just so that we can test all of this later on. And I'll do a final conversation, which is web design, lead gen, web design. This conversation captures leads interested in our web design services. It's a really beautiful day here in Norwich, which is in the UK. So in the UK, it doesn't happen very often to have really nice days, which is really good. But it means my dog constantly wants to go out and play in the garden. And so if you hear her scratch on my door or bark or anything like that, I am ever so sorry. Web design services. All right, cool. So if I go and send these kind of different messages, SEO services, this should trigger this really specific conversation. Perfect. PPC services. Perfect. Web design services. Okay, great. So this is how I would basically start this kind of this is how we kind of start these kind of builds. Just really setting the foundation of what we're going to build here. And obviously, I have three products in this particular fake company, and so I want to build a conversation that's slightly different for every single product. I might go and do a bit of theory later on how differently you could set it up, but I don't think we'll necessarily have time. So you'll just have to kind of follow my lead on this. Okay, so let's go through each of them, and basically we're going to build a slightly different journey for the users. Because obviously someone purchasing or interested in purchasing SEO services will have very different needs from someone interested in purchasing PPC services. And particularly me as the marketing agency, I want to capture kind of different information based on what the customer wants. If the customer wants SEO, then I'm going to have to ask about their industry and the target keywords they want to go after. If the customer wants to buy PPC services, I'm going to have to ask, share the industry, but I'm also going to have to ask about the channel. Are they going to advertise on AdWords, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Bing, if they're crazy, that sort of stuff. If they want PPC, I'm going to have to ask their budget as well. How much are they willing to spend every month? That sort of stuff. And so the purpose of these conversations is to capture this information, bundle it all up, and then send it to one of my sales staff so that they can call back. So there's going to be obviously similarities. We're going to ask for an email address, maybe a phone number, maybe a name. But ultimately that's kind of pretty standard. So I think what do I want to start with? Well, let's just start with SEO, I guess. Okay, so every single conversation, sorry, I'll just hit step back here for a second. Every single conversation that you see listed on this page is a different little process that your chatbot can handle. So this doesn't mean that currently there's 13 conversations here. That doesn't mean that it's 13 different chatbots. This means that these are 13 little processes that my chatbot can handle based on kind of the trigger and how people will enter this conversation. And so here I'm going to go and edit this very specific SEO conversation, so I can go and click and view. All right, so you've seen this page before because literally I just clicked that and clicked out again. So you might have spotted some of these bits here. But just to recap a little bit. So we have the name of the conversation here in the top left to kind of remind us what this is all about. We have the trigger at the top. A trigger is how a user will be onboarded into a chatbot or into a very specific conversation or process. And here the trigger is super simple. It's when the message is equals to SEO services. So that's exactly what we set up initially. I can go and view that trigger by clicking this. And as you can see, it's here. When any of the following conditions are met, if a message that is sent to the bot is equal to SEO services, we're going to onboard this person. I can do multiple things here. I can create more triggers if I wanted to, separate triggers. I could pile on multiple triggers. So I could say, equals search engine optimization services. And so I can kind of have, all of these different triggers here, or I can say, when they land on, start with mywebsite.com/SEO services. When they land on this, maybe I can start this conversation as well, which is quite a good thing. If I wanted to, I could do another one. So see, there you go. This is my dog. So let's say, what else could we do? So we could see when the user first uses the bot, maybe we want to send this message. So we might want to send a lead generation message or conversation as soon as a user uses the bot for the first time. Another thing I could do is I could delete these two, that's fine. But I could create a completely different trigger and say when the user contains when the user lands on a page URL that contains, http:/example.com/SEO services, and it's, let's say, it's a user that returns to the bot. So, and I can change this to all so that it's if and so these two conditions need to be met. So this is interesting because it means that I can trigger this specific conversation we're going to build, and I realize we haven't built anything yet. But I can trigger this very specific conversation when someone lands on SEO services, but not anyone. It has to be someone who's landed again on this and returns to the bot, sorry. And so this means that this person has not only landed on one of our services, but this person is also engaged enough to return and talk to the bot again. And so at this point, we might want to say, hey, do you want to, talk to an expert? We can put you in touch. So for now, I'm just going to delete this. We don't really need any of this. I'm going to do just this. All right, so the trigger is still just this SEO service. Perfect. And then now we can basically start building the steps. So we have the trigger at the top, pretty standard. You need to have a trigger at the top. And then we have little arrows that point from the trigger to the very first step, which at the moment it literally just says SEO services. So what I can do is first of all, I can say, I can change the name of the step, which I think is quite good. It always helps me to visualize the conversation in a flow that makes sense if I have steps that are named properly. And then if I hand this over to someone else at the company, they can kind of quickly see, okay, this is what he's been trying to build. Okay, so you have to realize that when the user lands here, they've already said that they're interested in SEO services. They've clicked a button, they've said a word, they've said something, or they landed on a page that means that they might be interested. And so what I want to do is I want to say, okay, I can basically take on a few details from you, and I'll pass you on to one of my SEO experts. So let's go and do that. So to edit the step already exists, so I just hit options. And there's all sorts of things we can do. So we can change the name of the step, don't really care for now. I can create transitions, don't really care for now either. We'll do that in a minute. I can do all sorts of things which we don't really care for now. What I just want to do is edit this message. And so I scroll all the way down to message content, and I'm going to write a bit of copy here. Okay, just checking the time, 1:15. All right, I can help you speak. I can put you in touch with one of our SEO experts. I will just a few details. All right. Let's do the pleasantries first. What is your name? Okay, cool. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to be building a fairly simple conversation, which is going to be capturing the name, and then we're going to capture a bit of information about what the customer actually wants. And so the instance of SEO, I said a few things, then I wrote them down. Industry, budget, target keyword. So it's probably good enough for now. And then, so we're going to capture all of that, and then we're going to ask for an email address to be able to contact them back, and then maybe, I think I'll end with a phone number, and maybe asking for an ideal day and time when the user would when the customer might want to be contacted. I think that's quite good. I think that's how I would want to be contacted. So okay, so we're asking for their name, and then we're going to say industry. So we're going to learn about the industry that they're into. We're going to just do that as a new step. Yeah, so this is a new step. So when you create a new step, you need to tell the chatbot platform how you're going to move the user from the step that they're currently on to the step that you're currently creating. And so it's pretty much explained here in full English, but I might have to go and open the door, unfortunately. It's pretty simple. So here, this drop down here again goes through all of these events that we can use, and you can use this to kind of say, all right, I'm going to only move the user forward if if they send us an email address or something like that. Okay, I'm just going to need to go and deal with that for a second. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Where was I? Yeah. So from step to the next step, you need to use these events to kind of say, all right, the user needs to move forward to the next step by doing X kind of action. And here we're asking them for their name. And so the only thing we need really is to get them to send us a message. And so I can just leave this to a message is sent. Perfect. And now we can draft a little message. So what do we want to ask? We want to ask about the industry they're in. I think the industry, we could do a few things. We could do um, PPC industries. Don't know if I could find a list of something like that. Um, business industries list. I think if I took a list of industries, probably going to be too long and a bit boring. Yeah, look at that. That's mental. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know enough about PPC to know kind of what the default industries they would have, maybe in in Google AdWords or something like that. So I think for now, I'm just going to leave it as. It's interesting because I could use a fuzzy composer. I'm going to leave it as free text for now, and then I might actually change that later on. I'll write it down because it's interesting. Um, Change industries to fuzzy composer, question mark. All right, so I'm just gonna ask, okay, great, nice to meet you, name. We'll change that in a minute. To kickstart your SEO requirements, I'd love to know about your business. Which industry are you in? Question mark. Okay, so what happened here? We created the conversation, which has a trigger. The trigger kickstarts the conversation, obviously, and puts us in this very first kind of double set of messages. And then whatever the user answers here, when a message is sent, or whatever the user answers, we'll move them forward. They move to the next step, which is asking them for their industry. So what I like to do at this step, I think, is go and test this just because it's always quite fun to go and have a look at what's happening. Okay, SEO services. I can put you in touch with one of our SEO experts. I will just need a few details. Let's do the pleasantries first. What is your name, Alex? So there's something that's going to happen here. Yep, so I sent a message, any message. Obviously, Alex is my name, but I could be called anything. You never really know. So you don't want to do any validations on name, which is something you can do, but you probably don't want to. And so it just says, great, nice to meet you, Square Alex, Square name. I haven't created variables just yet. We'll do that in a minute. And then it says, to kickstart your SEO requirement, I'd love to know about your business. Which industry are you in? Now, if I say chatbots, I'm in the chatbot industry, it's just not going to do anything because, as you can see, at the end of this conversation, there's nothing. I literally have one step, two steps, and then nothing. So there's nothing here that's going to really move the user forward. So we need to create more steps, basically. 20 past. All right. Cool. So industry, and then what else do we have? I'm going to do probably something that people don't really. I'm going to do budget first. So I'm going to ask the user for their budget, following the same process. And here I'm going to slightly tweak it. Okay, you are in the industry. Noted. Then we're going to have another step. What sort of budget are you working with? So obviously, this is SEO. Yeah. SEO requires a lot of work. It could mean hiring a team of 10 people to write content. It could mean hiring a very expensive technical SEO person who's going to actually tweak your website and improve its speed. There's all sorts of things that you could do with this. And so obviously, a typical marketing agency will ask for a budget so that they know what kind of angle they can go with this. If you have a £500 budget a month, then actually I'm going to put monthly. If you have a £500 a month monthly budget, they'll probably give you 2 articles a month and a bit of SEO, page title tweaking and things like that. But if you have a budget of £10,000 a month, then there's something there that they can work with. And so pretty typical question and would happen in pretty much any kind of lead generation type interaction anyway. So this is a good place to add some stuff here. So far we've only used standard messages, which is they're fine. They're just kind of plain text messages. But what we can do is we can add more kind of fun not fun, but more useful message types here. So this one has these little buttons here. They're called quick replies. I could create a bigger one like this, which would literally have these big buttons here. I could do a carousel, which would have multiple images in here. So I could just add, our logo, for instance, type some words and have some buttons here. So you basically, you get my point. You can create these big cards here, and you can obviously swipe through between them, which is very pretty. So you could do that. I could just send an image. I could send a video. I could send a payment or a progress, a payment, all sorts of things I could do. I think for this one, in my experience, the best thing to do is to do a quick reply. Annoyingly, I lost my message. All right, what did I say? What sort of monthly budget are you working with? All right, so what I can do here is with the quick replies, I can give a few options to the user without them having to think of, you know, typing it all in plain English. Sometimes you want to move with plain English and use natural language processing to figure things out. But sometimes you want to just provide buttons. Here, it's very typical that people will have, less than £500 or 500 to £2,000 and 2,000 to 10,000. I forgot the pounds sign, and then over £10,000. Okay, so it's quite typical that people will fall between these kind of categories, and it's just super helpful for the user to not have to bother and type the number or say, oh, well, I have a £200 budget to start with, but I can increase it later on, blah, blah, and like send a really long message that you don't really necessarily care about. What you want to know is you want to put them in a bracket. And this is gonna happen for loads of stuff. So let's say you have a car selling company or something like that. You could say, what kind of shift gears do you want? Do you want an automatic or a manual? And you could say, what kind of gears do you want? And just leave it at that. And people will say, well, I'm used to shifting gears with my manual, but I would like an automatic. You don't really care. What you want them to do is click manual or automatic. That's it. So this is kind of weird. Doesn't really matter for now, but we're just going to put some postbacks behind these buttons. So this allows us to trigger other parts of the conversation if we needed to. So this first bit that I wrote is literally just the text that's placed on the buttons. So as you can see, if I change this, as you can see, it changes the button text, and that's great. But what I can do as well is add something in the back end. My dog's coming around to say hi. I can add something in the back end that will just literally be a little postback that I can use later on. We're not going to use that for now, but it's just interesting to think about. So I'm just going to do 500, 2,000, 2,000, 10,000, and then over 10,000. So okay, don't worry too much about this. It's not really going to do anything for now. All right, going to close the door again. Great. All right. Cool. So as you can see, we have these options here now. Very simple, and I can let the user pick with just doing that. So this is budget. We have another thing that we want to ask. We obviously want to ask about their maybe a keyword. I know any kind of SEO is just actually going to rinse me for doing that. You probably wouldn't actually ask that. That's kind of a weird question, but I just kind of like it. So I'm just going to do, I'm still going to do it. So what kind of keyword do they want to rank for? So we're just going to do the same thing. In an ideal world, which keyword would you like to rank #1 in Google for? It's kind of a fun question. It's going to give you a bit of framing for your conversation later on. So you could call this person and say, so you're trying to rank for, bodybuilding. Good luck with that. You'll need a lot more than £500 a month, that kind of stuff. So it kind of allows you, I'm kind of going a bit on a tangent here, but it kind of allows me as the person receiving the lead to know a little bit more about my lead, what they want, what are their dreams, and that sort of stuff. Okay, so now we have all of the information on the kind of specific requirements. So now we want to do a bit of personal information capturing. So we're going to ask for, their email address. Perfect. Great. I've got all your requirements. Now let's capture what we need to have a nice chat. What is your email address? Perfect. So we're asking for their email address. So that's good. That means that at this step, when we ask a new step now, we're not just looking for them to send us any kind of message. We're looking for them to send us an email address. And so we can actually specify that within the platform, which is really cool. So I can say, I'm only going to move the user from the previous step, which is email address, to the next step, which is going to be phone number, if they provide me with an email address. If they don't provide me with an email address, I'm going to say, no, you're not moving forward. Please send us an email address. And so I can say if a message is an email. Perfect. I'm going to move them forward if I do that. I need to give the step a name. Okay. Um, in case I I don't know what a good a good excuse would be to capture their phone number. I'm just going to say, all right, and the best phone number to reach you on. Very good. And then finally, we're going to say meeting question mark. That's fine. And we're going to do, all right, I've got your phone number. What is there a date and time that you would prefer our team users to call you? I don't think this is really English, but that'll do for now. This is when I can whip out my foreigner card. All right, and so for this one, we can do something else as well, which is quite fun. So at this stage, the user would be able to type anything they want. What we can do is we can actually provide them with a composer, and a composer allows them to pick something in a kind of a nicer manner than just a normal text. And so here, I can change this composer from message to date and time. And so we'll have a look at that in a second. Actually, I'm going to change it back just so that you can see the difference. So I'm going to close this. And then finally, I'm just going to say thank you. All right, thank you. The message is sent. Great. I've got everything I need. Thanks. Name. And then we could say someone, most likely Steve. He's super keen. We'll be in touch with you very soon. All right, cool. We have a full-on conversation. It took us about 15 minutes to build, and obviously I went really quickly, really slowly because I'm explaining everything I'm doing. But you can see how really simply you could build this whole conversation. So let's go and have a look, see what happened. So I'm sending that little keyword that allows me to trigger this conversation. Super simple, as usual. Okay, I can put you in touch with one of our SEO experts. I just need a few details. Let's do a planting trees first. What is your name? Okay, my name is Alex. Perfect. I still haven't created variables, which is why this name is not filled out. To kickstart your SEO requirement, I'd like to know about your business. Which industry are you in? I am in retail. Okay, you're in the industry X, which is not saved for now. What sort of monthly budget are you working with? So here, this is interesting. I could click obviously a button here, but what I could do as well is I could also type. And so if I was, and let's pretend that I am, because I am the person building this bot, and I really want this question to be super accurate. So I don't want people to say, well, maybe £200 per week, but then later on I will change it, blah, blah, blah. I don't want this kind of thing to happen. I want it to be really organized so that anything that's below £2,000 I send to Steve, anything that's above £2,000 I send to Emma, because she's better suited to deal with big spends. So I really want this to be really, really specific. And so what I could do is I could actually turn off this little composer again. So that's kind of what I mentioned earlier. This send message composer that allows me to type, I can turn that off on a very specific message by message basis. So we can do that in a minute. So we'll do that in a second. But for now, let's say my budget is, I'm super rich. So let's say my budget is over £10,000. Okay, in an ideal world, which keyword we'd like to rank for on Google? Number one, so I work in retail. So I want to do, what am I selling? I don't know. Face masks, whatever. Okay, great. I've got all your requirements. Let's have a nice chat. What is your email address? So I can just send something random like this, right? Wrong. So now this is blocking me now. And if do you remember why this is blocking me? If you remember correctly, we set to the bot that we absolutely want an email address at this stage. And if it doesn't send us an email address, we want this to bug out. And so this is exactly what's been happening. The chatbot doesn't know what to do now because I haven't sent an email address. I sent some gobbledygook, and so now I'm stuck. And so this is something I can go back and tweak right now. So I'm going back to this conversation, and this is really good because it means you need to actually receive what you want to receive from the user and not just any kind of message. So this is the step where we're asking them for their email address. And if you remember, in the transition, we said we absolutely need them to send us a message that is an email address. And so what's happening at the moment is if someone sends something that's not an email address, the bot doesn't know what to do. So I can solve that by going into validation and just say message, email. If the message is not an email address, as you can see now this is highlighted, I want the chatbot to say, please enter a valid email address. Save that. Perfect. So now if I go back in here and we'll go through this whole thing again, I'm going to go a bit quicker. My name doesn't matter. My industry doesn't matter. 500, £2,000, whatever. Okay, what is your email address? Now, if I send the same thing, which is kind of a random gobbledygook, it's just going to say, please enter a valid email address. You're not being helpful. I can send it again. And it's going to do, please enter a valid email address. What are you doing? This is not an email address. Okay, and now I can send, alex@hotmail.com. And now all of a sudden, perfect, we're moving forward. We've actually given to the bot what it is that the bot wants and what it is that me as a marketing agency, I absolutely need a valid email address. I don't want people to move to my sales staff. My sales staff a nice long today and prior list of deals to talk to, and then all of this information is completely invalid. Okay, what is the best phone number to reach you on? Let's just say something random. I got your number. Is there a date and time that you'd like to call us? And so this is where I kind of talked about the composer, which I haven't done yet. So we'll go back and do that. At the moment, I could say Friday at 10 a.m. Great, I've got everything I need. Thanks, name. Someone most likely, Steve, is super keen. We'll be in touch with you very soon. Perfect. So we've created this entire lead gen conversation. So first of all, tap on the back. We've done this, super simple. We've managed to build this in about 20 minutes, like I said, and really it would take you about 5 minutes if you weren't spending your time explaining to someone else what you were doing. So this is super simple. So there are a few things I want to solve on this. The first thing I want to change is what is your, so I'm asking for the person's name, which is good, but I'm not saving that. And so here I have like squares names, which doesn't make any sense. So I want to change that. I want to change, I want to remove the composer at this step. So when we present these buttons, I want the user to actually use the buttons and not just type anything. I don't want them to be able to type. That would annoy me. The data wouldn't be the same depending on what some people will type, some people will use the buttons. So that would be annoying. And if I do, let's say, an integration with HubSpot or something like this, and I need that data to be really specific because I have, what they called a property in HubSpot that I'm filling out with this data. I absolutely don't want them to be able to mess that up. And so I'm just going to disable the composer completely. So that's the second thing I'll do. And then I'm going to add also a composer for the date and time. I don't like this kind of Friday at 10 a.m. People could just literally say like 10 a.m. Friday, Friday, 10 a.m., Friday, 1 p.m., Friday, 1300. You know, all of these kind of different formats could be used by someone, and that again would completely mess up my data. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to do a composer for the date and time. I'm going to do a variable for my name. I'm going to do a disabled composer for the quick replies message. All right, let's do this. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to create my variable. So I'm going to go into integrations, variables. As you can see, there's nothing here. It's for those of you who were here last week. This is obviously who weren't here last week. This is a brand new account, so there's nothing in this account. So a variable is basically a little piece of data that I can fill with information that someone has sent to the chatbot. So for instance, I could create here a variable called first name. I'm not going to give it a, oh, this is not spelled properly, first name. I'm not going to give it a default variable at the moment, default value, sorry. But I can save this. And now my variable has been created. And what I can do now is with this variable, I can actually use it throughout the conversation to say, when the user sends me a name, I'm going to fill that variable with their name, and I can reuse it elsewhere in the conversation. And I'm going to give you an example of that straight away. So if I go into the conversation builder, and we go back to the conversation I've just created. So at this step, I'm asking for the user's name. What I can do here is not only just capture the name, but I can reuse it later on. So, okay, we're going to receive, the user is going to give us an answer to this question. And what I'm going to do is save that answer into this variable for later on. So I can save this. As you can see, I have a little indication here that I'm actually saving this information into a variable called first name. And I can then reuse this later on into the message content by saying removing this, which didn't do anything. I can do these, sorry, I want to be quick here. I can do these double curly brackets here, which when I hit the second one, it brings up this little pop-up. And I can go here and find the variables. Obviously, we have a whole bunch of variables that are built by default, but I can go and pick one of my custom ones, which is first name. Obviously, that's the only one I have, and choose that. Perfect. And now I can save this. If I go into the demo and I do SEO services again, you'll see exactly what I mean. So now if I say Alex, nice to meet you, Alex. So it uses my information to present it back to me. And now this is obviously can be used for not just kind of not gimmicky, but kind of a UX perspective. This is great because it makes it more personable for me. But it can also be used for integration. So if I'm capturing all of this information that we're going to capture later on and pushing all of that into HubSpot or Salesforce or another CRM that I don't know about, we want to make sure that we know what a person's name is. And so we can just, instead of hard coding a name or not having a name at all, I can just use that variable into the integration and send that across. Cool. So I think there was another thing. Well, there's all sorts of things that we're asking the user here. So obviously asking for their first name, and then we're asking for an industry. So we need to capture that. We're asking for their budget. We need to capture that. We're asking for a keyword. We need to capture that. So every single step here, basically, we want to capture the information. And so let's have a quick whip through and basically create all of these. I'm just going to open this in the second tab just so that I can switch back and forth. All right, so industry. Let's do industry. So I can create that. What else? Budget. So I'm going to do SEO budget here because I'm also selling PPC, and so I'm going to create a different variable for the two. SEO budget, SEO keyword, SEO keyword. Email address. So that's great. This doesn't need to be an SEO email address because I'm going to use that across the entire build. So it doesn't need to be just that. What else? Phone number. Phone number. Save that. Close. And then meeting. So I'm going to say that as like ideal meeting time. And I think that's it. Okay, we've created 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 variables. So now what we can do is follow the same process that we just did with the name and start tagging all of this information into the variables, just so that we're actually capturing this information and not just kind of asking about it. So this is the industry step. So in transition, we're going to go and get that into the industry variable. Perfect. Same thing, you'll see a little icon here, industry, perfect. Budget, same thing, transition, SEO budget. Number one keyword, transition, SEO keyword. Perfect. Email address, save that as an email address. Perfect. Phone number. Close that. And finally, ideal time. Perfect. So now, like I said, we're capturing this information so we can reuse it inside the content. As you can see, we're asking for a name and then we reuse the variable here. We're asking for the industry and we actually need to tweak that message so that we can actually reuse the variable here. So same process, I'm going to delete that, use double curly brackets, go and find industry, choose this and save. What else are we using? Keyword, email address, phone number. We're using name again here, so let's tweak that. First name, save that. Perfect. Okay, let's go through and quickly talk about this to the bot. See what happens. SEO services. Pleasantries first. I'm going to say that I'm called Steve, because why not? Nice to meet you, Steve. Which industry are you in? So I am in healthcare. Okay, you're in healthcare, noted. What kind of budget are you working with? This kind of budget. I want to rank for face masks. I want to, what's my email address? So it's steve@facemasks.com, whatever. What phone number do you want to reach? This one. What kind of date and time would you like to be called? Tomorrow, 10 p.m. Just to be annoying. Okay, I've got everything I need. Thanks, Steve. So again, as you can see, it's reused my name here. Unfortunately, I called myself the same name as the person picking up the phone later on, so that's a bit confusing. But hopefully, you followed what I just did, and so it's not too confusing. Cool. So that's one thing sorted. I wanted to do the variables. The next thing I wanted to do was the composers, and it's probably where I'm going to end this session. So the composers are, like I mentioned earlier, it's the little bit of the little bit of real estate within the chat window where users actually type. And typically this will be obviously an input field, so you can type into it. It has a bit of text in the background that says type here or send a message or whatever. What we do with the ubisend platform is we allow you to not only have the composer, which makes sense, you need a composer, but we allow you to create your own composers by, for instance, changing the words behind the composer. So instead of saying send a message or type here or something like that, it says, enter an email address or tell me about your blah blah blah. So it just kind of makes it more contextual. And then the other thing that we can do is we also created default composers that you can use to either completely turn it off so that they can't type. So that's what we're going to do here. Or we will see other kind of types of composers. So on this step, we have a quick reply with loads of buttons or 4 buttons. And at the moment, the composer is message, which is the default composer. And what I want to do is I don't want them to use anything else than the buttons. I want them to just use the buttons. I don't want them to type anything. And so what I can do is I can go and say deactivate. I can actually hide it. It's just hidden. The difference between deactivated and hidden: deactivated is still there, but you just can't click into it. Hidden is actually completely gone. And so if I save this now, okay, saved, and I go into SEO services, and I go, my name is Peter. What industry am I in? I'm running out of industries. Athlete. I don't know if that's an industry. I should have said sports probably. Okay, so here I get to this step with the buttons, and as you can see, I can't type anything. There's no place for me to type anything, so I'm forced to use the buttons. And I know that it sounds kind of weird to force users to do something, but like I said earlier, it's great to keep your data clean. It's super easy for users. You kind of almost fall back to this idea that you need to make everything available and that they need to use natural language everywhere. But really, some people just prefer to click buttons when it's possible to click a button. And so here I can just pick this, let's say 500, and now the composer is back. So it's not turned off forever, it's just turned off at this very specific step. So that's the first thing I wanted to do. And then the second thing I wanted to do was create or add a composer for the date and time picker. Because like I said earlier, providing a free text for this specifically is kind of annoying because people could write dates and times and all sorts of things in all sorts of different formats, which is notoriously difficult for software to typically deal with, because if you send AM, someone says 2 p.m. and someone says 14 o'clock, or 14.00 and things like that. Softwares have typically quite a difficult time to adapt and figure out which one is which. And so here, what I can do is I can provide a composer called date and time. Save this, and you'll see exactly what this does. Just double checking that I'm on the right step. Yep. Okay. So let's trigger this again one last time, and then we're going to end this. Services. All right. My name is Alex. My industry is sports. Okay, I can't type here. I need to click the button. Perfect. Which thing would I want to rank for? Jumping jacks. I don't know. What's your email address? alex@hotmail.com. What's my phone number? This. Now, instead of having just a normal composer where I can type, as you can see now, it changed to click to choose the date and time. And so if I click this, I have this nice little composer popping out, which allows me to basically do exactly that. So I can say, all right, I would like a call on Thursday at exactly 2 p.m. And I can send that. And as you can see, the date here is formatted in a sensible format, so it's something that everyone can read. But more importantly, it's going to always be the same format. So when people pick their state, wherever they are in the world, whatever they prefer to type dates as, year first, month first, whatever, PM, AM, or full on kind of army hours. Whatever that is, it doesn't matter, because the bot is always going to format it in a way that we decided we wanted this date to be formatted. And so this is always going to be unified, which is really exactly what we want here. If I send this to an integration, like to a calendar integration, or let's say a CRM integration, I know that these dates will always be the same format. Okay, cool. So I think we can kind of end here. I pretty much spent the hour building this conversation with you. I think it was particularly, I mean, it's not a particularly long conversation, and nor is it complex at all, but it's a very, very good example of creating a lead gen conversation. At the moment, what's missing is an integration at the end. So this information is not going anywhere at the moment. So what we'll probably do next week is maybe create a second conversation much faster. I have 2 more that I need to create, so maybe we'll really quickly whip through those, see kind of what are the different stuff we can do with it, and then we'll discuss sending this data elsewhere. At the moment, this data just goes into the platform, but it's not pushed elsewhere. And so we can look at email notifications, we can look at CRM integrations and things like that. So we'll do that next week. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions, head over to ubisend.com. If you want to attend next week and you don't want to miss it, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, or just go to ubisend.com/drop-in. And every week, 1 o'clock UK time, I'm doing this. So actually, I'm completely lying. Next week, it's going to be my colleague Jacob who's going to take over for me, because I'm having a day off. And so yeah, you'll see him next week. But yeah, I'm excited to take this forward, and hopefully you've learned something. All right, have a good day.